Duckwrth has dropped a new album and it's called The Falling Man, and I am not sure how I feel about it. Now, when Unstatus Quo came out, I was really hyped because of the sound and the way that it felt like he had evolved, but he brought this really exciting flair that he had previously shown and displayed on his mixtape Extra Ugly. And even in that mixtape is very like, there's a lot of layers and things that happen in the way it like transitions and shifts. It's really invigorating, and it really does capture your attention. And then I heard Love Was Like a Mosh Pit and I was like, okay, don't really like this one, but I will still hold out hope for that album. I can't remember if that album was coming out. Like, I actually forgot that this album was coming out. It was just a matter of I wasn't paying attention, and also I'm constantly listening to a lot of music, so it kind of almost gets lost in the shuffle a little bit. But yeah, I heard Love Was Like a Mosh Pit and I was like, And then I see it's out. I'm like, okay, cool. I give it a listen, and like initially I'm like, I don't know about this. Now, like, I've given it a few more listens, trying to just, you know, get a better feel for it. In this case, with an album, it's better if you don't, just because it's a full length and it has a lot of songs. Now this one, it's 8 songs and only clocks in around like probably 30-40ish minutes. In it, we kind of get sort of a story, and I think that's where my confusion starts to like just arise, because Val seems to be this introduction to this like abusive relationship, or at least implies that Duckwrth himself or someone else is being subservient to this like destructive master of sorts that doesn't really allow them to have freedom. And I'm like, okay, Falling Man, he's stuck in this like horrible situation that is causing him to spiral. And then we get Fall Back, which is this super aggressive F you, I'm gonna beat up, it's just literally a beat you up anthem. Like, if you needed one, you got one with Fall Back, where Duckwrth just literally, and there's a part where he kind of like sonically, there's no song in here that I think is bad other than like Love Is Like a Mosh Pit, but that's only because I feel like it's sterile and plastic, and it just completely feels like this weird left turn from Duckwrth that isn't something where he's making it sound weird in a good way. It's just like, why are you doing this poppy type stuff when your stuff is like good the way it was? And I'm not saying that artists shouldn't evolve or change, and I don't want to make it sound as though he has to stay rigid and stay in the same thing that I enjoy, but usually the best artists are able to take that same thing that made them enjoyable, flip it when they have to, or flip it when they want to evolve, and people are still like, this is still good, and they're not just standing. Like, there are people around those people who are initially like orbiting the sun that are like, hey,
this is cool, I like sunlight too, like, I like this.
Instead of being like,
oh my god, there's a black hole, we're gonna die, like, can you stop?
And the thing about this is like sonically, yeah, like I said, like beyond Love Is Like a Mosh Pit, there's nothing here to complain about. There's a part on that same track that I was talking about before where Fall Back, where he kind of like has this like funny little interaction in order to like introduce the bridge that ends up getting like switched back anyway. Like, it goes back to the same aggressive style of Fall Back, and it doesn't really do anything beyond saying, hey, it's not really this aggressive, and it calms down. He's like, let's cool it down. I'm like, okay. And then we go right back to the aggressive style, and I just feel like it has these very moody shifts that happen throughout the entire album. But the problem for me is that conceptually, I don't feel like I'm understanding The Falling Man. Now, King's King is a super cool exploration of the word nigga and how it affects someone who is an artist who happens to be African American and has to deal with the different connotations that word has, and like balancing, like, yeah, I hate it when people who are not me say it because of the fact that like they don't have the same experiences that go with it from someone else who means it as a brother. That was awesome. But I have, like, as far as The Falling Man, I guess it can sort of speak to that in the fact that, yeah, this guy is basically frustrated with like racial tensions, and that's a very valid thing. I don't want to say that's not valid, because it is. But how, like, beyond that, I don't feel like this guy is falling. I mean, it talks about love. The song is about, like Nobody Falls. Seems to be, like, Duckwrth almost complaining that there's, like, no one's falling in love in 2021. So I guess in 2021, he assumes that, I guess, like, everyone's just, like, kind of on their Tinder-ish and fooling around there. At the same time, within the song, he kind of talks about how he's not really interested in anything other than flings either, or at least a relationship that's only based purely on the physical and not really the intimacy or the connection that usually can get spawned out of those. And it's just weird to me the way that the concept just, and the reason I say that I think that the concept confused me, because at first I didn't think it had a concept. I was just like, this feels like a collection of songs, and it feels like they're a little bit disjointed because I'm not sure where he's trying to go with this stuff. Like, it feels like the sounds change. Like, Fall Back is just like Bow is just really like haunting, eerie introduction to what seems to be like this very intense, what's going to be this very intense album. And then Fall Back's just like whoosh, like it just starts hitting you, and you're like, wait, I didn't ask to be punched in the face. I mean, no one does, but I didn't ask to be punched in the face. That hurt. Ow. And then suddenly it's like, hey, there are issues in the world that happen. And I'm just like, yes, but what? And then you get Nobody Falls, and then Love Is Like a Mosh Pit, which insta skip for me. And then we get into, there's like one where he talks about like how people said like they can't like basically mama said you can't rap about secular music, or you can't listen to this devil's music, and then like how that contributes to lifestyle. He sort of talks about like trap rap. He doesn't really criticize it as much as he criticizes the lifestyle that it may glorify and how that feeds into actual situations and how it makes people sort of act in ways that they otherwise wouldn't, because this music has them believing these fantasies. Usually it's kind of derived from the idea of power that trap rap seems to imply when you're walking around with your rollies and all this money and all these women are like just constantly fawning over you. And again, I guess Falling Man is sort of falling into these devilish behaviors. And then Sally Mae is this conclusion that has him on a car chase where he's frustrated, and this is where I was like, okay, so there is a concept here, because at the very beginning it kind of says the falling man has finally fallen as far as he can, and I was just like, what? Excuse me? Question mark? Like, I didn't feel like we went on a mutual exploration of this man falling. It felt like there were these moments in time. Like, here's a part where he's kind of in love, but not really, and he realizes love just sucks, and also blood that we bleed will forever be one of the worst lines I've ever heard. I never want to hear it again. Yeah, I hate that line. But anyway, yeah, so you say like the falling man has really fallen far, but we don't really get any of that, or we don't get it to a degree where it's like, okay, sort of the comparison I want to make, even though I don't like comparisons, because especially considering these are sort of two different artists. Like Duckwrth raps, but he isn't like Kendrick Lamar's style of rapping, and I'm gonna use Kendrick Lamar's Damn as a comparison point, because Damn sort of had that same vibe of like, this is a story about this, and we knew it because of Kendrick. Now Duckwrth is different in the fact that with the Extra Ugly mixtape, it explored a lot of different things, but I felt like it did it in a really fun way where it felt like you were going on this journey with this kid as he's sort of growing up and dealing with these things, and you felt Duckwrth's overall hunger behind that character. And again, here on The Falling Man, it just feels a little disjointed. Like, I feel like I'm getting yanked, and maybe that's the point, but if you're falling, I feel like just conceptually and chronologically, the song should sort of get almost darker as it goes, so we go with him on this journey of that, but we don't. Instead, we kind of get this sort of collection of songs that sort of talk about certain things that apply to it, and the songs are not bad. I cannot stress this enough. Other than Love Is Like a Mosh Pit, all of these songs are sonically sound. They don't really have too much. My only real gripe with Sally Mae, which is the last song, is that it way too aggressively shifts. That joint was jarring. That was really jarring. But beyond that, like, I don't have any legitimate complaints about the music itself. But again, like with Damn, where again, we know Kendrick Lamar's a storyteller, so again, that's kind of not fair. But Damn had this same type of idea, the falling man, if you will, where he's kind of slowly going through this journey, and it's Kendrick's journey, but it's also this other character's, where he's kind of getting darker and darker and darker as it goes, and he gets to a point, an inflection point, where he's like, okay, this decision could have affected my entire life, but it did, and that was why we were like, oh my god, this is so cool. And then you play it in reverse, and it still has the same message. With Duckwrth, no matter what, like, angle you play this at, you cannot, for me at the very least, maybe I'm thinking about it way too hard, but for me, when I listen to this, I do not get, the concept does not hit in the way that I feel like Duckwrth might have intended. And that's just unfortunate. Like I said, I think like there are songs on here that are really enjoyable, and like beyond like a few gripes, it's not like unpleasant to listen to. And overall, it's a fine album, but conceptually, The Falling Man does not really hit in the way that I think Duckwrth was intending. Now, I do have like, I love King's King for, again, the subject matter that it explores. Fall Back is really cool in the fact that it's super aggressive, and I sort of like the little bridge that he introduces. I like Sally Mae's like softer parts before it kind of just goes into this crazy like, we're going back and forth between the car chase, and it doesn't really feel like it's that intense. I like Bow, like the intro sounded cool. I was like, okay, we're getting real seductively dark up in here. Like these shades are about to like whip me into shape. Yeah, I enjoy quite a few songs in here, but I just like, unfortunately, the concept is really not all the way fleshed out, I guess, and that's just disappointing. Overall, as an album, I guess, if this is a concept album, it doesn't necessarily execute it to the degree that it could have. And I feel like if he maybe had more maybe used more songs, or kind of like talked more about the falling man and how he's like sort of appreciating his morality over time, that would have been good. But as currently constituted, I'm just kind of like, it's alright. Personally, I actually like the Extra Ugly mixtape a little bit more than this. I went to listen to it just to give myself some context, so I didn't just go in here and be like, you know, the Extra Ugly mixtape is fire and like this is trash, because this is not trash. I've listened to trash before. Sounds fishy. Overall, The Falling Man is alright, but it doesn't execute all the way on the concept, and that's just an unfortunate downfall. It wasn't intentional. I just couldn't think of another word. Downfall of the album. But sonically, it's perfectly fine, and I think the songs are perfectly fine. Though, like I said, they just don't hit that same Duckwrth chord that unique. Doesn't hit it all the way. That's okay. Sometimes it just doesn't, the ball don't roll in that court. I'm sure other people that are fans of him may really, really like this. And I've seen a few really, really like this. And I'm just kind of like, yeah. Duckwrth. The Falling Man. Well, this guy says, unfortunately, gravity is no one's friend. It might be because of all the basketball players that keep defying it, I guess. So maybe gravity's just a dictator. Power to the people! Continue to defy gravity! I'm gonna dunk someday. It's gonna be great. It's just not.